So I put up a Facebook message earlier saying that I was going to do a request video tonight, and if anyone wanted to leave a comment on the Facebook status, I would do a video for the best one. I actually received a private message on Facebook, so I wasn't sure that was strictly in the rules, but nevertheless, I actually thought it was possibly the most entertaining topic to discuss in the first instance. And the message said, and I don't have it in front of me, so I won't read it out word for word, but I will. I'll paraphrase. Why does David Haye get so much stick? Does he deserve it? So a two-part question, if you like. Now I've had a bit of a think about this ahead of recording this video. Let's start with why does David Haye get so much stick? We'll come on to whether or not he deserves it later on in the video. But as for why he gets so much stick, I've identified 4 separate reasons. The first reason we can handle pretty swiftly. I think there's a general sort of air of arrogance about David Haye that people kind of sense. It's not necessarily something he's said, not necessarily something he's done. It's kind of the way he holds himself. It's the way he's done reality TV. It's the way he's done fitness videos. It's the way he's gone out of his way to be a celebrity outside of the boxing world. You know, it's not something that I personally have a problem with. But if you watch the way he speaks in interviews, and if you watch kind of the way he presents himself and just holds himself as an individual, you do get a sense that this is an arrogant guy. And I think sometimes that is enough to turn someone off you, just to give someone an instinct that you're a bit of an ego, a bit of an arrogant guy. You know, whether that's the main reason or not, I don't know. But I think that perception does play on people's minds. You know, into the more boxing-specific related issues, I still think some of the major damage that David Haye did to his career was in that Vladimir Klitschko fight. You know, as we remember, Haye talked such a good game. You know, Haye was chasing Klitschko around, putting up images of beheading Klitschko, following him around the globe, saying how he was going to knock him out, you know, really turning it into a big exhibition. You know, almost doing a sort of Sun and Briggs on Vladimir Klitschko and really taking it to sort of that kind of Rocky movie level in terms of how he was going about calling him out. Now, that build-up was in vast contrast to the performance in the ring on the night that many of us unfortunately watched live at the time. You know, what we saw was Haye running around the ring, unwilling to engage, seemingly very cautious, and really fighting in a completely opposite manner to what his pre-fight build-up had suggested. You know, people forget now, but at the time that was a massive fight. That was a fight that had captured the public's imagination. People in their droves were backing David Haye to go out and beat Vladimir Klitschko. And really, Vladimir Klitschko outpointed him extremely widely in what would be classed as a very dull, drab, boring and uninspiring fight. I think people felt a bit misled by David Haye and his conduct in the build-up to that fight, and you know, some of the language he used and some of the suggestions he made about how he would deal with Klitschko. You know, no one would criticise him for losing to Klitschko, but it was the manner of the loss. You know, not going out on his shield, not really making any attempt to push the pace and to force the aggression, and not really even giving himself enough of a chance to knock Vladimir Klitschko out. So that's the second reason, was the Vladimir Klitschko fight. The third reason relates very nicely to the Vladimir Klitschko fight. I'm sure a lot of you can guess what it is, but it relates to David Haye's toe. Yes, after he lost the fight, at the post-fight press conference, you know, what did he blame his performance on? It was an injured toe. You know, of all the body parts you could injure, his toe. You know, it had to be the most ridiculous body part going. If he'd broken his hand, you know, if he'd suffered a bad cut, and we'll come on to cuts in a minute, if he'd dislocated his shoulder, fair enough, but it had to be the most embarrassing injury you're going to get. You know, you're scrapping with a 6'7" guy, and all you're worried about is your little toe. You know, for me, that was an instant where he lost credibility and became, if you like, a figure of fun and a figure of mockery in the boxing sport. You know, this is a sport where people queue up to see tough, hard men fighting, not complaining about their little toes. So I think that would be the third reason. You know, people like to see good losers in boxing. It's not just about good winners, it's about good losers. It's about sportsmanship. Look at how Andy Lee recently took his loss to Billy Joe Saunders. Gave him credit, came and shook his hand at the post-fight press conference. That was a gentleman, that was a class act. David Haye, no, he blamed it on his toe. Now, in hindsight, maybe his toe was broken. Maybe it did cause him sufficient injury or pain to negatively affect his performance. I don't know. I've never broken one of my toes, and I've also never fought Vladimir Klitschko. But I just felt the manner he went about it in that post-fight press conference lost him a lot of respect from the public. Fourthly, it was the pullouts. David Haye had 3 successive pullouts on his apparent return to the ring. The 2 that are most publicised are the pullouts against Tyson Fury. And the reason people don't like him are the fact that public in their droves paid for tickets to his fight, paid for hotels, took time, away from their families and away from work, made travel arrangements to go to see his fights, only for them to be pulled out. And the constant string of pullouts and the manner with which they occurred made the public think these weren't genuine pullouts. David Haye was finding different injuries each time. Some people were suggesting his biography should be called Head, Shoulders, Knees and Toes because of all the different body parts he was getting injured. And people kind of felt he was more ducking fights and, fancying a comeback and then pulling out when he's seeing how big his opponent was. And just sort of messing around, not taking it seriously, wasting time, but also wasting the fans' money. And I think that lost him a lot of respect. The Tyson Fury pullouts, I still haven't made a final decision on those. I'd certainly agree they were suspicious. But then again, you see that photo of David Haye with the cut. And I'm not someone who genuinely believes David Haye and Adam Booth stood there with a razor blade cutting himself. I don't believe that actually happened. It's suspicious he was sparring without a head guard, yes. Was he actually standing there cutting himself? Personally, I doubt it. But for me, the pullout that really doesn't get enough publicity, actually, the one that flew under the radar, that people should talk about a lot more than they do, is the Manuel Char pullout, which was supposed to be his initial comeback fight. And the Manuel Char pullout got called off due to, Haye pulled out of the Manuel Char fight for some reason or another. Some injury he'd got. But to me, that seemed obvious that David Haye had pulled out of that fight strategically as the bigger Tyson Fury fight had been made available to him on pay-per-view. And he wanted to withdraw from the Manuel Char fight to free himself up for the Fury matchup, which was a much more glamorous, much bigger sort of occasion, if you like, than fighting against Manuel Char. I'm not sure what the injury or the excuse was on that occasion, but for me that was the one that was perhaps the most blatant foul play. It was the fact that he withdrew from that Manuel Char fight seemingly out of nowhere than the Tyson Fury fight got made, which was a 10 times bigger fight. So I think those are the 4 reasons the public don't like him. Number 1, it's the arrogant demeanour. Number 2, it's the performance in the Vladimir Klitschko fight. Number 3, it's the toe injury. And number 4, whether he was injured or not, whether they were genuine or not, there's the perception that his pullouts were questionable and dodgy. Now, on to the second part of this question. Does he deserve the stick? In my opinion, yes. And do you know what? For the purpose of this, we are going to leave part 1 because I don't have a problem with him doing reality TV, and if he is an arrogant guy, for me, I don't really care about that. I'm a boxer, I'm interested in the boxing. I'm also going to leave part 4 because part 4 and the pullouts, which is why a lot of people have real issue with David Haye. Foreseeably, there could be something dodgy behind the pullouts, but also foreseeably he could just be a guy down on his luck who's had back-to-back injuries, and we should actually feel sorry for him. I'm not saying what my personal opinion is on that. I'm just saying that I don't have facts in front of me to make a decision on that. But I do have facts in front of me when it comes to the Vladimir Klitschko fight and the subsequent injury. And I thought his performance in that fight was so woeful and, to be honest, so embarrassing that yes, he does deserve stick. You've got to remember, if you're fighting Vladimir Klitschko in a fight that's publicised, that is going to be one of the fights and one of the moments that the public remember your name against. Remember for the rest of your career and even after your career. And for me, he just embarrassed himself that night. He embarrassed himself in and out of the ring. He embarrassed himself with the performance. He embarrassed himself with the post-fight toe injury and the excuses. Does he deserve stick for that? Yes. Am I looking forward to David Haye's return? Also, yes. This is where I'm going to be a hypocrite, and this is where I believe the majority of us boxing fans are going to be hypocrites. Because, yeah, whilst David Haye is unpopular in certain circles, we also have to acknowledge that on his day, he's one of the most exciting fighters and exciting personalities in the sport. And I do genuinely believe that the heavyweight division is a better, livelier, more entertaining, more interesting place with him in it. And there's certainly some big fights out there for him to be made. So I'm trying to be balanced here. Why does he deserve this? Why does he get the stick? I've given you that. Does he deserve it? Possibly so. For me, more due to the Klitschko performance, more due to the toe injury rather than anything else. Let me know your thoughts. I'm sure some people will be very, very mean about David in the comments section below. Let's discuss. If you've enjoyed this video, do give me a thumbs up. I will, of course, be doing a preview video soon for his fight with Mark Demori. So if you'd be interested in hearing that, please subscribe to the channel. I wouldn't want you to miss out on that video. Many thanks for watching as always.